Well, of course, there wasn't wisdom, but what there was a strategy. And the strategy in Ukraine is the identical strategy. Well, of course, there wasn't wisdom, but what there was a strategy. And the strategy in Ukraine is the identical strategy thought up by Mr. Brzezinski 25 years ago in Afghanistan. Brzezinski was the strategist for Jimmy Carter and convinced Jimmy Carter to say, look, the Russians are dominating Afghanistan with a civilian secular government. Let's create a new organization. Let's create al-Qaeda. Let's back Osama bin Laden and give his supporters weapons to begin fighting the Russians. And we can pull a coup d'etat there. And the Russians will fight back. And then we'll say the Russians invaded. And it worked. Saudi Arabia made a deal with America that they would push the Wahhabi extremists, the al-Qaeda, the most right-wing wing of the Islamic parties, and it worked. Essentially, al-Qaeda is a contract army for the United States.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming from a special location. As you can see, this is not my usual background or my usual office. I'm out of town, but I wanted to make this live streaming for you today. And today we are Wednesday or Tuesday, actually, on this 28th of May, 2025. And tomorrow and after tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday, I'm not going to do live streaming because I'm on a vacation. Therefore, I did this live streaming to also inform you about tomorrow and after tomorrow. However, on Friday, we are going to do our usual live conversation with our special guest and our weekly guest, Dr. Tarek Jibril Amar. I played this video at the beginning and the end of this video. Professor Mikhail Hudson, he says, basically, Al-Qaeda is a contract army of the United States. And this is something is very difficult to say, at least for me, a few years ago. I mean, I had my suspicions, and I was trying to connect the dots, and I saw that in different scenes, for example, especially war scenes, we have seen that Al-Qaeda fought shoulder to shoulder on the side which is fighting against an actor, which is a state or non-state actor that is anti-American. So it started in Afghanistan in the late 70s and 80s, in Chechnya, in Bosnia, in Libya, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, in different places. So it is very difficult to nowadays really ignore these coincidences that Al-Qaeda is probably a contract army for the United States, especially that they have been using them in different parts of the world in order to destabilize the countries. When you have a status quo, for example, and you want to break the status quo and form a new status quo, a new reality, then you need violent actors or violent elements to break this status quo and then reform a new reality. And this is what happened in Syria. Now, I posted something that I have shared it with you previously, guys, but this is extremely important because I predicted the attack of al-Julani on Aleppo, especially after what I saw in Gaza and in Lebanon. And I thought back then or predicted that this attack is imminent because I thought that the Israelis and the Americans will make a move on the chessboard in order to knock out Syria from the axis of resistance, especially after destroying Gaza and decapitating the leadership of Hezbollah. And I said, this is, guys, I posted this on October the 4th of 2024, which means that at least 1 month before the attack of al-Julani against the government forces in Aleppo and then moving all the way to Damascus. And I said, the man in the photo is Abu Muhammad al-Julani, the notorious leader of the al-Nusra Front, Al-Qaeda's Syria branch since 2012. For over a decade, I have exposed the CIA's backing of this terrorist group, but in the coming days, al-Julani will reveal his true role, the head of a US contracted army serving the interests of Israel. As I have already reported, al-Julani is rallying his terror forces with direct support from the US to launch an assault on Syrian army positions in the north Aleppo, Idlib, and Latakia. What is the goal? The goal is to keep the Syrian army entangled in internal conflict, ready to neutralize them if an all-out war erupts between Israel, the US versus Iran. And I said, but this is an opportunity after years of pressure to delay the long-awaited operation in Idlib for the Syrian army to obliterate this terrorist force once and for all. Unfortunately, though, the Syrian army didn't anticipate this attack, and this, I believe, is a big intelligence failure from the Syrian army side, that they couldn't see this attack coming from Idlib to Aleppo. However, I just saw the sequence of the events that Israel and the United States, they have waged a war against Gaza and Lebanon that is different from the previous wars. This time they were ready to completely decimate anything and everything, including entire neighborhoods, including entire towns and villages. When I saw the footage coming from Gaza, and then I saw the footage coming southern Lebanon, like they're blowing up entire neighborhoods, regardless of the casualty rate, I thought that this time this is different, and there are no red lines and limits. And therefore, I also sent some DMs to my friends, and I said, I think they will assassinate Assad. This was few weeks before Jolani attacked Aleppo. It didn't happen. There are so many still things that we don't know about how Assad escaped the country. I'm receiving now conflicting information from people who may know about the last moments of Assad in Syria. Some people say that he decided to leave, and others are telling me that the Russians forced him to leave because there was the military attaché of Russia in Damascus, and he told President Assad, or the former President Assad, that he has to go to Latakia and lead the operations from Latakia. And once he arrived in Latakia, some people claim that they have forced him to go on a plane and leave the country. And this allegation, I have heard it from multiple sources now. Some of them are talking about it publicly. I'm not sure about it. I cannot really confirm it or not, but it is a possibility. So keep that in mind. Now, how can I today, on the 20th of May 2025, personally say that Jolani is an asset for the CIA? He's an asset for the United States. We have concrete information about these things, guys. For example, the asset, someone who is an asset, right? I built my argument basically on three things. The first thing is, in 2012, guys, Jake Sullivan, everybody knows Jake Sullivan. He was working for Hillary Clinton in 2012, and Hillary Clinton was his boss basically, right? And he sent an email to his boss, Hillary Clinton, telling her that Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. And who was Al-Qaeda back then? The Nusra Front. It was Jolani's army, right? This was the first thing. Secondly, in 2021, James Jeffrey, who served as a U.S. ambassador under both Republican and Democrat administration, and most recently as special representative for Syria engagement and special envoy to the global coalition to defeat ISIS during the Trump administration, he told PBS that Jolani's army was, quote, an asset to the American strategy in Idlib. And thirdly and finally, and this is more recently, this is only a few days ago, guys, Jeffrey, the same guy who in 2021 told the PBS that Jolani's army was an asset to America's strategy in Idlib, he told Al-Mashhad TV, which is an Arabic TV, I believe, based in Dubai, he told Al-Mashhad TV that America's relationship with Al-Julani goes back a long time, and the US protected him from Assad. So those three things that I base my argument on basically explains why Jolani is an asset for the United States. I will show you a few things now so that we can see the evidence for the claims I'm making. The first thing first is Jake Sullivan's email to Hillary Clinton. So this is the email of Jake Sullivan to Hillary Clinton. It is sent on the 12th of February 2012. And he sent it to Hillary Clinton saying, Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. Otherwise, things have basically turned out as expected. Then we have James Jeffrey, basically telling PBS what is known nowadays, that he says James Jeffrey, he says, told PBS that Jolani's organization was an asset to America's strategy in Idlib. He said they are the least bad option of the various options on Idlib. And Idlib is one of the most important places in Syria, which is one of the most important places right now in the Middle East. So he told this on March 8, 2021. Finally, guys, this is something that is very recent. James Jeffrey, again, he went on Al-Mashhad TV and he explained America's relationship with Jolani, and he said our relationship goes back a long time since his name was al-Julani and we protected him from Assad. So this is the video that I cut it and I added English subtitles on it. So what you have to do, guys, is to really just read the captions, and this is an AI generated translation. However, it is 90% correct. So for you to understand what I'm saying, take a look.
أولاً، منذ أن استلمت حسابات أو موضوع سوريا كنا نعمل بشكل غير مباشر مع الجولاني في هذا الوقت في إدلب. كما تعرفون لا تزال تشمل 3 مليون شخص. كنا نحاول أن نضمن إيصال المساعدات لهم وحمايتهم من الأسد، وقد نجحنا في هذه الخطوة وبنينا إذن علاقة غير مباشرة معهم. وأيضا رأينا أن السيد الشرع يبدو أنه مستعد للعمل مع الولايات المتحدة على لائحة واسعة من المطالب التي قدمناها له قبل شهرين فيما يتعلق بمسائل الأمنية، وهو أيضا يحاول العمل مع الدروز بشكل ناجح أيضا مع الأكراد، ومحاولة أيضا تفادي أي نوع من القمع المفروض على الأقليات. قد شاهدنا بعض الأحداث مع العلويين، ولكن يبدو أن الأوضاع كانت مستقرة، وهذا هو الأساس الذي قرر رئيس ترامب العمل عليه. ومن جهة أخرى الأوروبيين، الأمم المتحدة والدول العربية جميعها قد قبلت بالشرع بشكل ما، وإذا العقوبات الأمريكية هي تقضي على أي نوع من التطور الاقتصادي.
طيب، ولي العهد السعودي الأمير محمد بن سلمان يعني هو الذي طلب شخصيا من الرئيس ترامب أن يرفع العقوبات عن سوريا. وافق الرئيس ترامب. عمليا رفع العقوبات بيد الرئيس أم لابد أن يصادق الكونغرس على ذلك حتى نفهم هذه الصورة على نحو أفضل؟
يستطيع الرئيس أن يقرر برفع بعض العقوبات، والعقوبات الأهم عقوبات سيزر التي شاركت في وضعها وفرضت من قبل الكونغرس وتم تجديدها في ديسمبر، إذن وهو آخر يوم من حكم الأسد من المثير للاهتمام. لذلك الكونغرس يقرر برفعها بشكل تام، ولكن إدارة ترامب تستطيع أن تقدم ربما اقتراحات لرفعها لشكل مؤقت، ليست بمثابة رفعها بشكل تام. هذه قضية يجب أن نناقشها هنا في واشنطن، لأنه يجب رفع هذه العقوبات.
So the relationship of al-Julani with the US administration goes back in the past, few years in the past. They have protected him from Assad. And Julani has shown flexibility with the US demands, especially the security demands, which means Israel. Basically, and because he has shown this flexibility, now they claim that Julani is a really nice guy. He's just cooperating with the Druze, he's cooperating with the Kurds, and he will be our nice guy. And I think this is the true definition of the asset that the US uses, like a lemon. They squeeze him and then at the end they throw him away. And I truly believe the time will come for Julani to be dumped in the dustbin of history by the US and by his allies. And however, it will be too late for Syria. And it is already too late because Syria now doesn't have an army. Israel destroyed it completely. Syria's economy is in tatters. They need foreign investments to reactivate the Syrian economy, but the foreign investments means that they will kill the national economy, just like they did in Yugoslavia in the past. So Syria is in a really bad shape. They don't have any deterrence. They don't have any sovereignty, and they they have become like it is like a patronage. Saudi Arabia is a patronage, Qatar is a patronage, Turkey is a patronage, the US, everybody, every intelligence asset in the region, or every intelligence apparatus in the region is involved now in the Syrian scene. However, there is one person that I don't really say these words easily, like I despise someone, I hate someone, but no, there are people who deserve to be despised, right? And hatred is just a normal feeling. Like, we're humans, we can hate something and we can hate some people. I mean, we should hate psychopaths, right? We should hate criminals, war criminals. We should hate certain politicians and officials who work day and night basically to make our lives miserable. And I know that we can really do very little to change this situation. Therefore, these feelings of hatred is just a normal reaction from our psyche and from our mental against certain types of personalities who have done enormous damage, not only to the Syrians, to the region. And one of these people is Robert Ford. Robert Ford is the former US ambassador to Syria, and he speaks Arabic well. And this person, I remember in 2011, when the protests started against Assad, what he did, basically, he drove his car all the way to Hama. Why Hama? Because in the 80s, Hama was the capital of the insurgency, Muslim-bordered insurgency against Hafiz al-Assad. So he went there with his diplomatic car, basically, without telling the Syrian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because an ambassador, when he has to go somewhere in different city to a different city to a different region, they have to tell the Ministry of Foreign Affairs so that they can arrange him security, basically, right? So that they know what is he doing. But he didn't tell anyone, and he went on his own. I think the British ambassador was also with him, and he went distributing flowers to the protesters, just like the Victoria Nuland was distributing cookies to the protesters in Maidan. You remember that? This is the same script, different personalities, same script. And he was basically encouraging more people to go to protests and go against Assad. Is this the job of a diplomat? Is this the job of the ambassador? Like, imagine if I'm the, let's say, ambassador of a country A in a country B, and if the opposition is going on protest, I'm going and joining the protesters. It never happens anywhere in the world or by any other power except for this arrogant American and British diplomats. They're the ones who think they're exceptional somehow, and they're not. They're not intellectually exceptional, and they're not diplomatically exceptional. They are below average people with a very limited IQ, but they do enormous damage. And they do enormous damage with their stupidity. They do enormous damage with their psychopathy. They do enormous damage because they are the term that I use for journalists is prostitutes, right? Because they're prostituting for the governments. But these people are one step ahead, and they're the diplomatic wing of the empire, basically, just creating havoc and mayhem and destabilization in different parts of the world. And this person is one of the people who supported not the normal opposition, which is a legitimate right in any country to have opposition against any government, which I support. And I supported at the beginning. I supported Haitham Manna and his political group. And now that we are in 2025, when I see what this ambassador has done basically in Syria, and how he rebranded and he polished and he worked in the diplomatic corridors to change the narratives and change the realities in Syria, and he was on TV channels all the time. He was someone whose opinion is important, right, in the US administration. And he sided alongside radical Takfiri Islamists, the ones who perpetrate heinous war crimes, the ones who believe that Christians and Alawites and the Jewish people and the Druze and the Kurds should be exterminated. This is the type of a person this Robert Ford is. And nowadays, this week, he was in some research center because he works for the Middle East Institute, and this is paid by the Gulf monarchies, basically. So he's basically a whore for these think tanks, for this think tank and the payers and the people who pay them. And also, he's also, I believe, works for the Atlantic Council. And this week they hosted him to give his brilliant, mashallah, you know, I'm just being sarcastic now, his opinion about Jolani. And he basically said what I was saying for quite a long time, that Jolani was the asset of the United States. So Robert Ford, he revealed during a lecture at the Council on Foreign Relations at Baltimore on May 5th, 2025, that he was part of a team selected by a British conflict resolution NGO to rehabilitate Abu Muhammad Jolani. So he was part of a selected team by a British conflict resolution NGO, we don't know which NGO, to rehabilitate the image of Muhammad Jolani and bring him out of the world of terrorism and into mainstream politics. For that mission, Ford says he met Jolani twice to train him, beginning in 2023 and 2024, months before he entered Damascus, and the third time in January 2025 for a 10-day visit. This time meeting him at the presidential palace. So this terrorist Jolani is an agent, but yeah, it's a free Syria, right? I will show you the video of Robert Ford. Take a look.
Starting in 2023, a British non-government organization which specializes in conflict resolution invited me to help them bring this guy out of the terrorist world and into regular politics. And at first, I have to tell you, I was very leery of going. I sort of had images of me in an orange jumpsuit with a knife to my throat. But after talking to several people who had gone in, and one of whom had met him, I decided to take the chance. And so the first time I met him, this guy's name is nom de guerre was Abdulkader Jolani, but his actual name is Ahmed Shara, which he only revealed to the world after he captured Damascus in the Blitzkrieg of December 2024, about 5 months ago. First time I met him, I sat down next to him, and I'm literally as close as I am to Roy, and I said, this is all in Arabic, I said, never in a million years could I imagine that I would be sitting next to you. Long beard, thin fatigues. And he looked at me, he speaks very softly, and he said, Walla ana, me neither. And we went on and actually had a pretty civil conversation. I share this because he said something which really piqued my interest. He never apologized for the terrorist attacks in Iraq or in Syria, although there were many fewer in Syria, never apologized. But he also said, you know, now I am governing an opposition-held area of northwest Syria, and I am learning that the tactics and the principles that I was following in Iraq do not apply when you actually have to govern 4 million people. And they had 2 million residents of that area of Syria, and then another 2 million refugees who had come there from other parts of Syria. So they had a population of 4 million. He said, I am learning that to govern, you have to make compromises. I was very struck by that. So that was in March 2023, just over 2 years ago. We went back a second time in September.
So do you notice how the audience and him, like, they take it like it's a joke, you know, like they laugh about it. He's just dropping a joke, like, I was so worried that he would put the knife on my neck and I'm wearing this orange suit. Don't worry, Habibi. Those scenes and those videos are only made for the people of the region. Everybody knows that the vast majority of the victims of ISIS and al-Nusra and al-Qaeda and Jaish al-Islam and Ahrar al-Sham, the ones who were decapitated, slaughtered, their heads were cooked on a barbecue, they were burned alive in ovens. We all know the vast majority of them were either Syrians or Iraqis. or Egyptians or Libyans. Those were the people of the region. You were not decapitated, and you will not be decapitated. To begin with, Operation Timber Sycamore, why did CIA had secret operation in Syria? They had already a public program under the Pentagon, by the Pentagon basically, and arming and training of the so-called moderate rebels, but they needed a covert operation to train and arm radical Takfiri jihadists in Syria, and this was Operation Timber Sycamore, which brought Julani to power in 2024. And notice the dates that he gave. He met him first in March 2024. They knew that this regime change war will be reactivated because he said, I was part of a team to rehabilitate Julani. And March is May, June, July, August, September, October, November is 7 months prior to the reactivation of the regime change war and Julani's attack on Aleppo. And then he met him again when in September 2024. And this was 1.5 months before Julani attacked. They were preparing him for this day. So this was all well planned and prepared. And what really mind boggles me is, where is the counterintelligence of Syria? What were they doing when this Robert Ford was visiting Idlib? Haven't they had any clue about it? Haven't they anticipated what's being cooked behind closed doors? It's so sometimes beyond surreal, and it's so ridiculous that they couldn't see that. But the difference now, as all these ambassadors now said, that Julani is ready to cooperate with them. And now, because one of our commentators, I think Adrian Dittman, he said, there were so many good candidates after Assad, but they chose Julani. Why did they choose Julani? Why, among all the opposition leaders, political opposition leaders, they have picked Julani? The reason is Israel. And this has been confessed recently and revealed by Israeli Major General Tamir Haiman. He told Israeli Army's radio station that Israel has an interest in quietly creating chaos in Syria. Quote, what we can say is that in the near future, Syria is caught up in a power struggle between factions as the new regime tries to establish itself. This is exactly why they needed someone like Julani, because Julani will not be able to impose his control on the entire country, and there will be lots of chaos under his nose. So you can now, guys, read the captions. This is in Hebrew, and this is a radio conversation with Israeli Major General Tamir Haiman, and he's talking to the Israeli Army's radio station, and there are captions. Take a look.
כמו שאנחנו יודעים להגיד שבטווח הזמן הקרוב סוריה נתונה בתוך מאבק כוחות בין פלגים וניסיון של ההתבססות של המשטר החדש. הדבר הזה של כולם נלחמים בכולם ויש הסכמים אקורדים ביום אחד וטבח בעלווים ביום שני ואיום על הדרוזים ביום שלישי, כל המהומה הזאת ותקיפות ישראלות בדרום, כל המהומה הזאת היא במידה מסוימת טובה לישראל, כלומר מצב כזה
שיהיו עסוקים בעצמם ולא בנו.
כן, לאחל לכל הכוחות בהצלחה, רק דבר אחד לעשות את זה, בשקט, לא לדבר על זה, לא להתחיל לחבק את הדרוזים ולהגיד לקורדים שהם ככה ולעליים שהם ככה ושהמשטר, בשביל מה אנחנו צריכים לדבר על זה? צריך להיות בשקט, אם רוצים להתערב בדבר הזה, אז זה צריך להיות אחד מהסודות הכי שמורים, כך עבדנו בעבר, אין שום תוחלת בהצהרות רב על המציאות, על כך שיש לישראל אינטרס בשימור המצב היחסית כאוטי הזה.
This is so revealing, hilariously, actually, because he basically says, we don't need to talk about it, we need to keep quiet. If we want to get involved in this, it must be one of the best kept secrets. That's how we have worked in the past. There is no point in making boastful declarations about the reality, about how Israel has an interest in maintaining this relatively chaotic situation. Amazing. Our friend Lindsay Snell, she's doing great investigative work. I think her YouTube channel is let me check the name of her YouTube channel, Lindsay Snell. Things aren't great. That's actually a good YouTube channel and a good name called Things Aren't Great. And she made a video, which is a longer video, 10 minutes video, but I'm going to show a segment of this video. This shows what is happening in Syria under Julani and the complicity of the United States, which have no problem with someone like Julani. They have no problem with someone who was the leader of the Al-Qaeda in Syria, as long as their security needs are met, right? So this is not from someone who is an Assadist or someone who stood with Assad or somebody who cheered Assad, or this is a serious journalism.
6 months ago, Julani, or Ahmed al-Shara, the new president of Syria, had a $10 million bounty on his head. Now he's laughing with President Macron in France and shaking hands with Trump in Riyadh. Because apparently terrorists are okay as long as they're useful to the West. And that's something Julani himself has said.
تصنيف أمريكا لكل المنظمات والدول هو تصنيف لمن يخرج عن إرادة الإرادة الدولية وإرادة النظام الدولي والإرادة الأمريكية.
But Julani has apparently done a good job selling out to the American agenda, because this week, President Trump announced that the U.S. would lift its sanctions on Syria. But the violence against minorities hasn't stopped.
أنت علوي قانوني يجبروا الناس أحيانا تعود.
هاي المنطقة كلها ولع البيوت تماما، وحتى فيها ضيعة سكنوا فيها من الرقة مستمرة من يوم السقوط حتى الآن.
So imagine they go and like, are you an Alawite? Yes. So you have to bark. This is how they try to humiliate, and then they kill you. And this is something on X, when I write anything against Julani and then I see all the Julani minions in the comments, they're telling me to bark. And it is funny because they are mostly with fake names and they don't have their profile pictures. Meanwhile, I'm posting with my real name and I'm using my face and everybody knows me. So basically, who is the dog here barking? Aren't they the ones barking behind fake names and fake photos? Meanwhile, I myself, I put my face in public and I put my personal well-being and security in jeopardy because of what I say and what I do. So who's the dog here? And with all due respect to the dogs, of course, because dogs are so much better than these people. And I have a dog and I know what it means to have a dog. The sweetest people on earth, right? But because they see dogs in a degrading way, because they believe dogs are dirty, they believe that dogs do not deserve to be part of your family, so they always like look at the dogs like they're dirty souls. That's why they say bark. This is the difference of mentality is so big, right? Between civilized people who treat dogs with gently and they even adopt dogs and make them part of a family, and they adopt dogs for the kids so that they can grow up together. I grew up with dogs. When I was a kid, we had lots of dogs in Aleppo. And I'm someone who is, I'm in love with dogs, basically. When I walk in the street, I look at dogs' faces and not in people's faces. And these people come to my profile telling me dog bark because they think that's a degrading thing, you know. Anyways, there is so much talk nowadays about the Americans have asked Julani that one of the conditions is to protect the minorities, right? But protect them from who exactly? And why the minorities need protection? And if minorities need protection, who protected them in the past? And against who? Why the minorities need protection? Aren't we saying here that whoever is in charge of the country is posing a threat against the minorities, or we have lots of militias in the country which are embedded with or affiliated with the Julani regime, that are committing crimes against the minorities? What's the interpretation of we ask Julani to protect the minorities? From who, basically? Isn't this so-called HTS and their security forces and Abu Amsha's forces and all these groups which are now under the flag of Syria and the Ministry of Defense of Julani, aren't they the ones committing these crimes? So they're asking Julani, right, to protect the minorities. From who? From his forces. This is another segment for our friend Lindsay Snell. She interviewed people basically without showing their faces. And those are the men in the Syrian cause. They talk about the situation. Even at checkpoints, they ask you if you're an Alawite. They force people to howl. Most of them are strangers with long beards. The place is completely lost. It's people displaced, replaced by strangers, or it's been burned and looted. As for investigating this, they are laughing at us. This is the video where they Lindsay asks questions and talks with people who are victims of this type of behavior.
We spoke to Alawites who were forced to flee their homes.
اول ما انه حطوا حواجز مؤقته وبعدين في حواجز ثبتوها، يعني صاروا يستفزوا الناس وهن عم يصوروا عم يسالوا، بجوز مجرد ما يطلع على الهويه يعرف انه هذا الانسان فرضا من علوي او من اي طائفه ثانيه. انت علوي تقول لهم ايه؟ يجبروا الناس احيانا تعود. بلد عندنا بالمنطقه اللي انا قاعد فيها بدي اجيب غرض لبيتي او شيء. اذا مارقين هيك مرور الكرام 10 سيارات كلهم ملتمين كلهم دخول كبيره اغلبهم جنسيات غير سوريه. يعني اذا مارقين هيك بدهم يضربوا رصاص بالجو خوف العالم، ما عندهم اي مشكله. طيب ما فيني اطلع، يعني حتى اذا صار لي شغل ما بسترجي اطلع.
اجوا ولد وين ابوه؟ طفل قال لهم بالنهر. نزلت مجموعه على النهر وبلشوا اطلاق النارات على النهر. صوب شاب عنه، ركضنا عليه سعفناه، سحبناه للشاب لمسافه انه بعيده شوي عن يعني تقريبا 700 800 متر تحت وصلنا على الزفت انه نسعفه. كان الشاب فارق الحياه. هذا الشاب من عنا مضيعه. احدى النساء كان في حلقه باذنها ذهب، مسكوه وسحبوه اذنها ضربوا ولا ابنها، سحبوا الحلق من ابنها. مبطن في مراود، هاي المنطقه كلها ولوا على البيوت تماما، وحتى في ضيعه سكنوا فيها من الرقه.
انا بعتبره كله ضحك علي حبه ما بنقول بالعاميه، لان الوقت بدهم يوصفوا هيك شيء ما بدها هالوقت كله. مجازر وجثث بالارض وضيعه محروقه ومبينه، تحقيق ما بده هالوقت.
مستمره من يوم السقوط حتى الان.
So those are the testimonies, guys, of the people talking there. So you are free to believe the ambassadors of the United States or believe the people. And these reportages are from Lindsay Snell's YouTube channel. This is her channel, Things Aren't Great, as you see, and I'm using some segments from her reportages, and I think she's doing a brilliant job in exposing this Julani regime and its crimes against the Syrian people. Another incident happened last week, and this time in Hama, guys. Hama is in central of Syria. And this is reported by the Syrian Democratic. The page is the Syrian Democratic Observatory, and so this is in Hama in central Syria. Basically, they're burning a car of a Christian family in one of the Christian neighborhoods in the city of Hama, and throwing paper leaflets in the neighborhood with the writings "Death to pork eaters and expect new releases." So I think if I show you this video, it will be flagged violent scenes, so I will not play this video. But this is the situation nowadays for the Christians, for the Alawites, for the Druze, for the Kurds, etc., and also for the moderate Sunnis, basically. Syria is in Syria as we know it is gone. I will show a photo of people who were kidnapped by the Julani regime recently. And I'm doing this because these 3 kids, guys, were kidnapped by the Julani thugs. So Julani's thugs kidnapped her 3 children on March 23. We need the UN to press the regime to find and release them. So those are the 3 kids, 2 little daughters and 1 young boy. He doesn't even look over 18 years old. And this is their mother basically talking about her kids several times. She keeps posting videos after videos for the so-called international community, for the so-called humanitarian organizations, for the so-called journalists to do fucking something about it, and nobody's doing anything. Neither the UN nor the human rights organizations, no one, not even the Syrian government, are searching for her children, and they were kidnapped by the thugs of the Julani regime for being Alawites, basically. I really don't know what else to say. I'm posting this now on also my channel. If you guys have any contacts with the UN or any other organization and you can share this, you can share, of course, this video with them. And if you want the source of the news, I will show you also the source of the news now, which is the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. And I hope the heart and the soul of this poor woman would find peace again by reuniting with her kids. This is a very horrible situation that we have to raise, amplify basically her voice and the voices of thousands of people who are still missing in the coastal cities. And this is coming, guys, from the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which has been a long time anti-Assad outlet. And they say a mother's cry in a heartfelt plea. The mother of the missing Hamza, Lubna, and Lana Hamoud appeals to anyone who can help uncover the fate of her children, missing since March 23 in the area of Beit Shanta on the Homs Tartus highway. So you now see the source of it and you see the video. If you have any contact with any human rights organization or anyone in the UN, especially the Human Rights Council, please share her story with them. The last thing I want to report today in this live streaming is the story of Eli Cohen. In the past few weeks, I have made a video and I argued that Julani is the new Eli Cohen. And Eli Cohen was a very famous spy, which I'm going to share his story again for those who don't know. However, it seems that the Mossad retrieved from Syria a trove of over 2,500 classified Syrian documents and personal items belonging to Eli Cohen. He was an Egyptian-born Israeli spy who infiltrated the highest levels of Syria's military and government in the 1960s by posing as a Syrian businessman. And this secret operation was reportedly carried out just ahead of the 60th anniversary of his execution in Damascus. Netanyahu's office announced on behalf of the Mossad that the Syrian intelligence archive on Cohen was transferred from Syria with the help of a strategic intelligence partner. I think this strategic intelligence partner could be Qatar or Saudi Arabia. The archive includes materials such as Cohen's original will, spy gear, letters to his family, surveillance reports, forged passports, personal belongings like keys to his Damascus apartment, the original court order sentencing him to death, and photographs with top Syrian officials. Officials described it as a significant step in ongoing efforts to recover Cohen's remains from Syria. We don't know yet if they recovered his dead bodies as well, but they have recovered all his items who were kept in secret for over 60 years in Syria, and Israeli Mossad couldn't reach it, but now Julani handed them over freely, basically, to the Israelis. So, is Julani the new Eli Cohen? History repeats itself, only more brazen. This is what I wrote about this exact incident, which I was baffled about it. In the early 1960s, Israel achieved one of its greatest espionage feats when it infiltrated the highest echelons of the Syrian government. Eli Cohen, posing as the affluent Syrian businessman Kamal Amin Thabit, befriended Syria's political and military elite and fed Tel Aviv invaluable intelligence that reportedly shaped the outcome of the Six-Day War in 1967. His success was due not only to his cunning, but to his ability to exploit the weaknesses of those around him. Lavish parties, guys. He organized lavish parties. So I'm asking, is this some sort of a Jeffrey Epstein style? He was organizing parties for them. He was giving them alcohol and egos eager to impress. Cohen gathered sensitive information such as Syria's fortifications on the Golan Heights, troop movements, and Soviet military aid. Cohen visited the Golan Heights and suggested planting eucalyptus trees near Syrian bunkers, later helping Israel identify targets in the Six-Day War. Despite his success, Syrian counterintelligence grew suspicious due to his radio transmissions to Israel. He was eventually caught in the 1965 and executed. Now, this information I'm told by a friend who says his thesis basically was about Eli Cohen. He says that it wasn't the Syrian counterintelligence who first had suspicions of him or about him, but rather the Indian embassy in Damascus. They are the ones who detected these radio transmissions, and they have told the Syrian authorities. And after that, the Syrian counterintelligence started investigating it. So more than half a century later, one must ask, are we witnessing a sequel? And if so, who is writing this next chapter of intelligence warfare? Reports have emerged that the Israeli intelligence service was recently granted access to one of Syria's own security service units. With the cooperation of the al-Julani regime, they collected 2,500 documents, photos, and personal belongings of none other than Eli Cohen himself directly from Damascus. Let that sink in. Not only has Israel returned to the very ground where one of its most infamous spies operated, but it has done so with the full blessing and complicity of a regime now calling the shots in Syria. If Eli Cohen was the ghost of espionage past, is Abu Muhammad al-Julani, the former al-Qaeda figure turned would-be statesman, the ghost of espionage future? The irony is staggering. In 1965, Syria executed Eli Cohen for his crimes against the state. 60 years later, Julani seems to be not just tolerating Israeli intelligence activity, but facilitating it. While Cohen's mission was covert, today's operations appear to be part of a more open, transactional collaboration justified by political pragmatism. Julani's role in this emerging reality deserves scrutiny. From jihadist warlord to Polish politician in the blazer, Julani's transformation has raised eyebrows across the region. But what is more alarming is the extent to which his faction has aligned itself with foreign intelligence agendas, including those of Israel. If Cohen had to lie, disguise himself, and seduce his targets, Julani's methods seem to rely less on deception and more on opportunistic cooperation. It is one thing to lose secrets to a clever spy. It is another thing to hand them over willingly. The difference between Eli Cohen and today's geopolitical reality is that betrayal is no longer covert. It is conducted in daylight behind thin veils of partnership and diplomacy. The West has recast Julani as a reformed actor, yet his regime's apparent openness to Israeli intelligence suggests a deeper game is being played. So yes, Julani may well be the new Eli Cohen, but unlike Cohen, he doesn't need to pretend. He has already been embraced by power brokers who once pretended to hate him and whose support now enables him to redraw the lines of allegiance in Syria. The question we must ask is not whether history is repeating itself, it clearly is, but whether anyone still cares about the cost of betrayal when it is repackaged as real politic. This is the sad thing about Syria nowadays, that anything about betrayal, like it doesn't make it, it's not even important, like, yeah, okay, we betray, so what? We sell information, we give them what they want, we give them all the secrets. It's like, in Arabic they say it's like there's no more curtain left on the face of the people. I'm not talking about everyone, right? But in this broader public discussion, if somebody raises the issue of, dignity, honor, sovereignty, borders, secrets, intelligence, they look at you like you're some sort of a backward person. These things have become so normalized nowadays in Syria that it's being done in broad daylight. And basically, Julani arrested a Palestinian leader in Damascus, and he allowed Secret Service from Israel to come to Damascus, to the security unit, and torture him to get confessions from him about the remnants or the remains of an Israeli soldier who was killed by the Syrian army, I think 40 years ago, I think in southern Lebanon. This was in the Battle of Marj Sultan in 1982 in Lebanon. So look, the CIA, for example, and the Mossad, on the surface, officially, they have brilliant relationship, right? But at no time the CIA allows any Mossad operative to come to one of their secret units and torture someone there. It never happened. To my knowledge, I don't know. Like, Julani allowed Secret Service from Israel to come to Damascus, to one of the Syrian security branches, to torture a Palestinian leader, to get confessions from him. So if you point out to this, they will say, what are you talking about? It's not the time to speak about security. It's time to speak about the sanctions are lifted. Aren't you happy for the Syrian people? Why aren't you happy for the Syrian people? This is how they talk. Who says I'm not happy for the Syrian people, for the sanctions to be lifted? I was working to lift these sanctions for a very long time. When you guys, I'm not talking about you, the viewers, those guys who talk to me, they were the ones who were calling for more sanctions. And now, of course, I'm for lifting the sanctions on the Syrian people because I lost the internet connection. Anyways, all these people who are now in charge of the country, they're not going to be poor, they're not going to starve, they're not going to lose their jobs, they're not going to starve, they're not going to have lack of medication and anything. They're going to be rich, they're going to have lavish lifestyles. The only ones who are going to suffer are the Syrian people. So of course, I'm for lifting the sanctions on the Syrian people, but the price for it was very, very high. And Syria has bowed basically completely in front of the US and Israel in exchange for that. So he knew it, Julani knew it, that he has to bow, he has to kiss the hands of Trump and Israel and give them whatever they want so they lift the sanctions. That's the reality of the matter. So guys, I'm going to do the next live streaming on Friday with Dr. Tarek Jibril Amar at 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time, because I'm on a vacation. I wanted to do this live streaming today to tell you that I'm not going to be able to do live streamings on Wednesday and Thursday. However, on Friday, we will definitely do with Tarek Jibril Amar again. So if you're liking the content and the analysis and the commentaries I'm making, I would really appreciate it if you only hit the like button and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We are around 500 subscriptions away to hit the 100K goal, which is finally we could hit it. And yeah, if you want to support my independent work, of course, you can become a patron, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis, or there are different other means in the description below if you don't want to use Patreon. So peace be upon you guys and upon your families, and I will see you on Friday with Dr. Tarek Jibril Amar. Salam.